Imagine a world where popes don't just fight with words. They dig up each other's corpses to settle scores. Welcome to 9th century Rome, where the church was less holy and more house of cards. The late 800s were a disaster for the papacy. In just a few decades, over 24 popes came and went, many not by natural causes. The Vatican had become a political battleground, controlled by powerful Roman families, scheming nobles, and even foreign kings. The church wasn't a symbol of peace. It was a pawn in a brutal game for control over land, power, and influence. Anecdote: Pope Formosus, a smart and ambitious bishop from France, is a post that had so darkly failed. It had died discarded. He rose quickly through church ranks, but not without making enemies, especially with a ruthless political faction led by the powerful Spoleto family. Formosus was accused of everything from plotting treason to illegally taking his position, though many of these claims were thinly veiled political attacks. Still, he survived long enough to become pope in 891 AD. But his time in power was turbulent. He crowned not one, but 2 different emperors, trying to play both sides, a decision that would come back to haunt him. In 896, Formosus died, officially of natural causes. Unofficially, now the Spoleto faction, furious at Formosus for supporting their rivals, installs their puppet, Pope Stephen VI. Stephen had one goal: destroy Formosus's legacy. Not just metaphorically, literally. But Stephen wasn't just angry, he was unhinged, and that's how we got one of the most disturbing trials in history, where the accused was already rotting in his grave. Because Stephen VI wasn't done with Pope Formosus. He was just getting started. Picture this: a dark, incense-filled basilica in Rome. Candles flicker, bishops murmur prayers, but at the center of it all sits a corpse, robed in papal vestments, slumped lifeless on a throne. This isn't the beginning of a horror movie. This is 897 AD, and Pope Stephen VI is about to put a dead man on trial. The body on trial? His predecessor, Pope Formosus. He had been dead for 9 months, buried, decomposing, and then exhumed by order of Stephen VI. Why? Because Stephen, under pressure from the powerful Spoleto family, wanted revenge. Formosus had crowned their enemy as Holy Roman Emperor, and now that Formosus was out of the way, they wanted his entire legacy wiped clean. So, Stephen VI dug up his corpse. He had Formosus' skeletal remains dressed in full papal regalia, the rich red robes, the embroidered stole, the mitre placed gently on his half-missing skull. His decaying fingers were even curled around a ceremonial scepter. Then, he propped the corpse upright in a chair, the papal throne, and convened a full synod. Bishops, cardinals, and church officials gathered, not in protest but in attendance. This grotesque spectacle would become known as the Cadaver Synod. And yes, it was treated like a real trial. To make it even more surreal, Pope Stephen VI appointed a deacon to act as Formosus' defense. The deacon was instructed to stand beside the corpse and literally speak on its behalf. Picture the scene: the Pope barking accusations, while a trembling priest mutters replies like, "No, Your Holiness, I did not illegally assume the papacy. No, I swear I never conspired against the empire." All while the rotting corpse slumped silently beside him. Stephen VI's accusations were sweeping. That Formosus had violated canon law by serving as bishop in 2 places at once, that he had usurped the papal throne, that he had broken oaths, and sowed division in the church. The verdict was never in question. The entire Cadaver Synod had been orchestrated with one goal: to destroy the memory of Pope Formosus. And so, unsurprisingly, the corpse was found guilty on all charges. But the sentence, that's where the horror truly escalated. First, Pope Stephen VI ordered Formosus' decayed body stripped of its papal vestments. The rich robes were yanked off what was left of his frame, exposing the blackened, withered remains beneath. His sacred status gone. Then came the symbolic mutilation. The 3 fingers of his right hand, the ones used to bless the faithful, were cut off in front of the court. This wasn't just desecration, it was ritual humiliation. In the eyes of Stephen and his allies, Formosus was no pope, so he had no right to bless, to lead, or even to be buried in holy ground. But Stephen wasn't finished. The body was dragged from its throne and paraded through the streets of Rome, a decaying warning to anyone who dared oppose the ruling faction. Priests, nobles, and commoners alike looked on in disbelief as the former pope, now barely more than bones and cloth, was pulled through the mud like a criminal. And then came the final act. The Tiber River. Stephen ordered the corpse to be thrown into the river, denying Formosus a proper Christian burial, a spiritual punishment far more serious than it might seem today. In medieval belief, burial in unconsecrated ground was thought to jeopardize one's soul. The body drifted away, swallowed by the dark waters. Stephen VI had made his point. Even death couldn't protect his enemies. But the spectacle backfired. This grotesque display of vengeance shocked the Roman people. Grotesque display of vengeance shocked the Roman people. Whispers began to spread. Had the Pope gone mad? Was this justice or blasphemy? As it turns out, the people were about to answer. Pope Stephen VI believed he had won. He had dragged a corpse through court, humiliated his predecessor, and buried the legacy of Pope Formosus beneath the mud of the Tiber. But what he didn't realize was that he had just signed his own death sentence. In the days following the Cadaver Synod, Rome changed. The public, already weary of church corruption, was horrified. The images of Formosus's blackened corpse, slumped in papal robes, had burned into their minds. Even for the brutal standards of the 9th century, this was too much, too far, too insane. Riots broke out in the streets. Rome's political factions turned. Bishops who had sat quietly through the trial now scrambled to distance themselves from Stephen. Within months, Stephen VI was arrested, thrown into a cell, and, in a grim twist of irony, strangled to death. Just like the corpse he had mocked, he too would end up in the dirt. But the church wasn't done cleaning up the mess. Stephen's successors acted quickly. The next pope, Romanus, annulled the Cadaver Synod and tried to restore some order, but chaos lingered. One pope after another attempted to repair the damage, each walking back the actions of the last. In total, 3 popes would reverse and re-reverse the legacy of Formosus in the years that followed. The church had become a revolving door of revenge, a holy institution consumed by its own politics. And Formosus, strangely, he would get one last act months after his body was tossed into the Tiber. A monk claimed to have found it washed up on shore. Despite the decay, the body was allegedly still miraculously intact. Interpreting it as a divine sign, his supporters secretly gave him a proper burial, restoring his dignity at last. The Cadaver Synod was never forgotten. It became a warning of what happens when religion becomes theater, when power outweighs morality, and when leaders forget the sacred trust of those who follow them. Today, historians still debate how something so grotesque could have happened at the highest level of the church. Was Stephen mad, or simply a man corrupted by those around him? What's clear is this: in the chaos of medieval Rome, even the dead weren't safe from politics. Subscribe for more brutal, bizarre, and unbelievable history, and leave a comment. Was Stephen a fanatic, or just another pawn in a holy power game?